No.
Yes. Right.
So you guys need an alignment, not coaching.
The coaching industry has exploded.
We want to be better. We want to move forward and keep growing.
Uncoachable is going to be released every single month with a new coach, a new idea, a new approach, and a new takeaway. Hi, I'm Jon.
I'm Rhys, and he's Uncoachable. Hello and welcome to Uncoachable with me, Rhys Waters, and my business partner, Jonathan Burns. We are very excited to bring Jason to the show. Jason, welcome. Jon, you introduced Jason to us.
I know Jason a bit.
Okay.
Or I Googled him recently as well to get to know him even better, which is a little bit of a, I don't recommend ever Googling yourself. I'm apparently a flexible comedian if I Google myself. And I think Jason has an interesting doppelganger as well that you stumbled across.
Yeah, there's a music producer who worked with Madonna.
It could be this Jason.
It's because your last name is Jason Donkersgoed. Is that the right pronunciation?
That's right. And you're talking about Jason Metal Donkersgoed, who I've never met, but I've sent an email once to say, hey, we must be related.
Yeah, listen, because it's not I love that your nickname is the Donk.
Yeah, that's right. The Donk, Good Donker, and Donkey.
I someone with a name that is quite memorable in North America and pretty common once you get in the UK. I find that kind of is a really good calling card to have a name that people remember because it's like so unique, I think.
Yeah, it's true. Once you get them over just trying to say it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right. We wouldn't understand as Burns and Waters.
No.
I was talking about my first name.
Oh, Rhys. Let's empathize.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that said, so we reached out to you for a couple of reasons. One is a sense of what your background is, your history, your experience in leadership. Reached out to you to understand sort of you're now a coach and coaching people on how to be a leader and leaders. And so we wanted to sort of get an understanding of your methodology, your approach, all that kind of stuff, and see if there's an opportunity for us to learn and potentially be coached as well. So we're going to throw it to you in the sense of, tell us a bit about Jason and and how you got to where we are.
Yeah, sure. So, let's start with the essentials. I'm an imperfect human. Trying to be as good as I can, trying to make the world a little bit kinder, a little bit gentler. Because I believe when the world is a little kinder, a little gentler, good things happen for all of us. Husband, father, brother, friend, hiker, snowboarder, aspiring author who just so happens to have 30 plus years of leadership and business success, right? My history, 19 years old at the time, my spouse and we had our first kid. I knew nothing about being a father. I didn't have any post-secondary education, and I had to make my way in this world. I had to be scrappy, and I had to provide for my family. So without post-secondary, I somehow managed to string together this really interesting and fun career that went through food services to retail, to the repair business, to consumer packaged goods, to banking, to post-secondary. And then finally at age 47, I just always had this little thing in the back of my head that said, hey, I need to somehow finish what I had not finished, which was post-secondary. And I took my master's in leadership at Royal Roads. And that was just such a beautiful moment in time. And I kind of caught the bug as far as learning and continued on to take coaching education. And it was through an International Coaching Federation accredited coaching education school, which International Coaching Federation is kind of the gold standard of coaching within the world. I had just finished a 2-year master's degree that was life-changing. I take this little 8-month coaching course, and it completely shifted everything for me. Fundamentally, who I was as a human being needed to be questioned through the work that we did in that course, through getting lots of coaching in that course, through really understanding the core competencies of coaching, I really had to question who I was and understand myself at a much deeper level. And it's been probably the best gift that I've ever gotten in my life. So ever since, I've been coaching. I've been working with a post-secondary where we also run a coaching education program where we actually accredit coaches as well. And it's been just some of the most exciting and fun work of my life.
What would you say is like unique about your angle in terms of, or what is kind of like really distinguishing for you in terms of like your approach to coaching?
Yeah, I have this crazy ability to sense what's happening deep within someone. And here's the deal: lots of times we come to coaching, if as a client from the perspective of I've got a real problem to solve, and it's usually kind of what I call above the surface, right? So it's a technical problem, or hey, sales are down, or whatever. Very often, as we start talking, I'll just notice something, or I'll hear something in your voice. And we'll pause and we'll just explore that a little bit. And all of a sudden, we'll find maybe a little belief that's sitting underneath the surface, or an emotion that's sitting underneath the surface that happens to be stopping you cold from making the right decision, or a quality decision, or a quality behavior. So this ability to kind of just really see and be with you, and help you see yourself, right? The type of
I feel exposed now. Maybe I don't want to see it.
Right, I'm the other way around. I've got walls up saying you're not going to see the real me.
He's going to suss me out. He's going to get.
Yeah. Can we have private sessions and then share what you learned?
Exactly. It's funny that you say that, because it's actually true. Some people aren't ready for that, and part of my job is to understand that and watch for that. So if somebody is just not there yet where they want to explore that, it's on your terms, not my terms. Like I'm of service to you, not the other way around, right? So then we might go right back up to the surface level stuff, and hey, listen, lots of tools to work with that stuff as well, right?
Yeah. So what I'm thinking about, originally I was thinking this was more of a leadership coach approach, but you're actually more about individual improvement and all of that kind of stuff as well. So not necessarily aligned with a business, or what? Like, who's your ideal, client or person?
Yeah, so I work with leaders, entrepreneurs. I work with senior leaders on a very regular basis in large organizations, and they are coming to me with business things. It just so happens that underneath everything lives other things like emotions. Like you can't take emotion out of decision making, whether you like it or not. So it doesn't matter what I'm coaching. It's never just a functional thing.
So when I was kind of looking at your description, it was you talk a lot about being human, being ethical in the approach. So does it? It sounds like maybe you're like deployed. Like you mentioned, like, oh, we want to increase sales, or whatever it is, but then you kind of go in and almost, it sounds more like therapy when you're there with them.
Yeah, and the difference between therapy very often is backwards looking,
Okay.
and coaching almost always is forward looking. We're taking a look at, well, what are the resources that you do have that you maybe just aren't seeing right now? Let's face it. When you're specifically an entrepreneur, very often you're feeling alone, you're feeling isolated, you're maybe struggling with work-life balance. I love it. Maybe you're feeling completely overwhelmed by just the sense of, hey, we have so many decisions to make. What if we make this decision right or wrong? What does that feel like, right?
Yeah.
You experience decision fatigue, all those kind of things, right? So it's really important that we're supporting you as a human being first, because it's the human being that is going to make those quality decisions or those quality behaviors.
What's like a transformation that you're like super proud of? You don't have to name them or anything. It might just be.
Oh yeah.
You know, is this someone you kind of you met them and you were like, oh my god, and then afterwards they were like, you changed me. You know, is it kind of? I love those stories because at least those kind of stories are much more easy to plant in your head than kind of like a textbook, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. So one particular young entrepreneur, and I find this within young entrepreneurs especially, social media is screaming at us saying, hey, listen, we should just love this concept of a hustle culture. Are either of you hustle culture people?
You know what? No, we rail against the notion.
Yeah.
However, we are
it's a subconscious hustle, not a conscious
there's
hustle.
not a moment where we don't roll our sleeves up and do something, do stuff. And I've described Rhys as a wonderful starter of everything. Right. And so, but then I compliment on the ability to finish something. Right. But it is always doing. And so that hustle culture notion, we rail against it. We don't like those words. We were speaking with a coach that we filled out the form, and it's
I
haven't done it yet.
All right. So it was the number of hours you work in a week, and it's like, well, I don't really, we don't count hours. And there's like, well, how many hours would you like to be working? I'm like, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Right. So that we don't subscribe to the look at me, I'm working really hard.
Get up at 5:30 a.m. Eat 4 raw eggs. Run 5 miles.
We have a producer that does the 5 a.m. club, and I'm like,
what's the 5 a.m. club?
You get up at 5 a.m. I'm sure there's more to it.
I wake up.
Jason's up at 6:30. I mean, he's prepared. I mean, so
I'm usually awake at 4, but that's ADHD.
Well, right. So this is where Jason's going to get under the level here, right? Like, I'm off and up as well. And there's other things that I don't want to unpack publicly or with anybody really. So we don't subscribe to the hustle culture. So back to
so the reality though is there are thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs that they subscribe to the hustle culture hook, line, and sinker, right?
Yeah.
And so here we start working together with this young entrepreneur that has multiple businesses on the go, and he has subscribed to this 110%. Meanwhile, because of it, his view has just narrowed so small that he's actually making poor quality decisions. From a stress perspective, you could just feel the burden of everything on him because he's trying to perform to this hustle culture over and over and over and over again, right? And so it wasn't even what was right for the business. It was, hey, I need to perform because social media says this is who I need to be in order to be a great entrepreneur, right? So we start working together and we just start examining that and thinking about it together, having conversations about it together. And, where does that come from and why do you subscribe to that? How is that working for you? And what do you want to be different? And as we start to talk about that, we really uncover how overwhelmed he was and how close he was becoming to burnout, right? And that's a really tricky thing when you're an entrepreneur. And in his case, he had bills that needed to be paid and all that kind of stuff. And so we worked through that, and we just ended up taking a look at some of the things that he loved in life that were not within that hustle culture. And so he is a huge outdoorsman. He loves skiing. He loves hiking. So we just tied to some of those things and said, what does that feel like? What does that look like when you are actually doing an incredible run and you're in flow in that run? Like, what are you thinking about? What does that experience do for you? Those kind of things. And we just started to take a look at, well, what if we approached business in that way? And there was something so simple. So he is in sales of a large product. And so he just did something so beautifully simple. Before going out, and he has to drive up to his customer, before going out, he just took a moment and he took a breath and he just thought about skiing. That's it. And then literally as he walked out, he approached that customer in a completely different way. So there's an example of something where we're just changing the quality of your behavior. But in order to do that, we have to actually examine, well, why do you think the current behavior makes sense? And why are you hook, line, and sinker into this concept of hustle culture? And does it actually make sense? If it does, terrific. Let's keep doing it. In this case, it didn't.
Here's
I just wondered if he wore the boots. I'm joking.
Right. Here's I'm struggling with something. One is business coaching versus therapy, and because to me that sounds much more like putting priorities in place, personal priorities in place, and finding that balance. And I see that more like a therapy conversation than a business coach.
I think, but I guess my impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, I don't want to put words in your mouth. It's you understand that those two things are totally interlinked. That like they can't be separated. I guess if you're the person and the role are so connected, you're pulling from the personal to improve. Is that a fair interpretation?
100%. And here's the deal. What we started talking about was his inability to close some sales. Right? That was the business function that he needed. The sales were not where they needed to be as an entrepreneur, and he needed to fix that immediately. As we started talking about that, it quickly emerged that, hey, the reality in this particular case was not the talent or the ability to do those sales. It was actually this thinking pattern that was stopping him cold from showing up in a way that allowed him to actually create that sale.
I'm gonna actually put words in his mouth, because what I hear is that people run the business. The business doesn't run the people.
Love it.
Let me say that differently, which is,
I know what you meant,
right?
We all know what you meant.
People run the business. The business don't run the people.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so maybe you want to say that better than I can. It's actually, and when we edit this, it comes back in as your words, and I just reiterate.
Black and white photo, John Burns quote underneath.
No, I actually like that. That's an interesting way of saying it. But yeah, the reality is any business of any sort is made up of a collection of human beings. Whether we shouldn't say that anymore because there's a couple AI businesses that have no human being whatsoever. But with exception to those, every business is made up of a collection of human beings that happen to be doing the work. So, to Rhys's point is we cannot separate the two, the business function from the human being, right? And that's probably why I believe so strongly in a kinder, gentler place. Like, the reality is in the workplace, like if I'm talking about, these large workplaces that I can go into, so very often, it's the people that are overwhelmed or stressed. And the reality is if we can relieve that tension, the quality of the behaviors of the business go up automatically, right? And it doesn't mean that we're always focused on that. Sometimes it's as simple as, hey, I have this really functional problem. Okay, let's address that functional problem and move on, right?
So in like that, that's a really good example of a story, of like a successful coaching scenario for you. Now for us, like we consider ourselves uncoachable, but I think for my part, I don't want to put words in John's mouth.
My job.
Yeah. So like for myself, like I've had anytime I've interacted with coaches, it's always been a really negative experience, and maybe it's the wrong people, maybe I just hang out with the wrong people, but I always feel like I'm being sold something and I feel like I'm like, you don't understand me, like I'm kind of feel that like a lack of authority to be able to kind of help me specifically in the industry I'm in. I'm not like, I know I could probably be better at stuff. I'm typically chaotic and very inconsistent, as John's happy to vouch for. But so how do you approach people like me who are like, the management said I had to spend this time in this room with you. It's better than being at my desk. So what do you want to talk about? Sport? Like, how do you deal with people who are kind of like maybe more hostile?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I get that every once in a while where an organization has decided to reform someone, and they'll send them to me, and like it's
That sounds
first
like a
off,
nightmare.
it is. It's a ridiculous thing that any organization would ever do that, but sometimes they do that, and it's my job to give it the best shot. The first thing, and you kind of said, um, I feel like the person doesn't see me. So the
Mm.
very front end of these conversations, and you just kind of proved my entire premise by saying that, just so you know, right? Um, like because what we're about when we make sure that we bring the human into it is helping you feel seen, heard, and understood.
Mm.
That's the very first step, and I can tell you when that happens, when we do that well, defenses automatically lower. Soon as those defenses are lowered, now we can begin kind of going, okay, well, where do you want to work? And I'm meeting you where you're at. You're always in charge of every single meeting that we have. Like
Mm.
I'm here for you. You're not here for me. Now, and I think to your point though, let's face it, coaching is an unregulated industry. So anybody can hang up a shingle and say, I'm a coach. And so those people that you've experienced that are literally trying to sell you something, the question I would ask you is what research did you do on what type of coach they are?
It was less of research into the kind of coach they are. It was more gut reaction and vibe. If you know what I mean. It's a really
Yeah.
good. It's a good point.
But I think that's great advice on our coaching journey or search, which is
Research.
what's the research? Because we did a ton of research on you as well, and we typically do it. And Rhys was writing down things like joy and fun, and I was writing down things like most profitable first step. And so we had these clashes, but we often talk about, right. So you're right. Our skepticism comes from everybody's hanging up a shingle. You
Yeah.
talked at length about your qualifications, certifications, the courses, the programs that you've done as well, which makes it a little difficult for us to sort of poke holes at Jason, but I think we'll still will. and mainly because, so I look at, you talk about leadership and making sure that you see people and see where they're at. That's almost a baseline for us in the organization. So I suspect that may be an anomaly where we say our teams, we are about building really good teams, really good people, and meeting them where they are. We've actually written job description based on candidates instead of what the job to be done is, recognizing that the people are better than what the requirement is, or they can fit into it and grow into it, right?
Mm.
So that's part of our challenge is when we talk about our knowledge, our baseline, how do we say, okay, how do we get better?
Yeah.
Right. And it's a loaded question. It's a little bit of a backstory on us, which leads into saying, how would you approach coaching the two of us, knowing that he's over there, I'm way over here, and there may not be a line in between?
Yeah. Yeah. Can we go back for a second and then come back to that one? So you have to remember it because I have no good memory. So you
Oh
have to
yeah.
come back to it. But let's go back to this hang up the shingle, and let's maybe talk a little bit first about what type of coaches there are when you're thinking about coaching. So, from my perspective, there's a difference between mentorship and coaching. So mentorship means this person has knowledge and they're passing it on to me. And coaching is, hey, we're working with you to figure out, hey, what do you want and why do you want it, and how do we increase the quality of your decision. So it's not me having the knowledge. It's actually me having the questions and the technique to make sure that I help you feel seen, heard, and understood, and then that we can actually partner in thought to increase the quality of your decisions, right? So, and then there's also consulting, which often gets called coaching as well, which is, hey, these guys are going to come in and give you an exact plan of exactly how to tackle X, Y, Z from a business perspective. Very often I find several versions of those are going to be those sell hard that you experienced, Rhys. Like, hey, are you going to sign up for my $50,000 course in coaching for 12 months, right?
I imagine a packed room, and they've got like a cheek mic and
Yeah.
like a big screen behind them, and everyone's clapping and cheering, and they've all paid $500 for 5 easy steps to transform their
Exactly.
lives. That's what's burned in my head.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the reality is that does exist out there,
It does, yeah.
and in some cases, that is the right answer if they have the exact background that you're looking for. But maybe that's not what you're looking for.
And here's my problem is that my what's the phrase I'm looking for?
I know the answer to
my quirks.
Oh.
My quirks. So being neurodiverse and a blend of things. There's like I've worked so hard trying to find things that work for me and like adaptations. Even before I had any like diagnosis, I was just aware that I needed to work in a particular way. And my wife is incredibly patient. And so there's a bunch of stuff that I've done. So because I don't feel like when people say do this, is it Myers-Briggs personality test and those kind of things, I kind of like shudder because I'm aware that like there's a way that I work that is kind of very unique to me. Maybe it's not, maybe there's other people, but it feels unique in terms of how I work with other people around me. And I always, my skepticism is always I get protective of that because I've developed it for decades. And I always wonder like how I can bring someone into that. Because it's and it constantly changes. It's very, like I said, inconsistent, but like a constant process.
Yeah, so I love that you said that. And I was working with a CEO that would probably describe himself very similar to how you just described yourself. First off, let's look at the base belief that I have and most people that I've met that have accreditation through International Coaching Federation. You are a whole person. And my job is just to hold the mirror up to the pieces of your beauty and amplify them as much as humanly possible, right? So give him a hug.
Right?
So to your point, if somebody is coming in and they're trying to change you, that is problematic. My job is actually, so let's say you bring me, I don't know, a business problem of I don't know how to deal with this problem. With this person that is just not performing right. Okay, great. My job is to have a conversation and find out if you have been here before in any way, shape, or form. And chances are you have at some point in your history, you've dealt with a difficult human being. Okay, what did you do? What did that look like? Oh yeah, I just did this and this. Okay, great. Does that apply to this situation? Yeah, it does apply to this situation. So it's almost helping you remember the resources that you have in your own unique way. My job is not to change you.
That's what they try to do in school. I'm joking. No, so
wait. If I hire you, can you change him?
No chance, and I won't even try.
Just had to ask.
John gave up years ago. Can I fix him?
I do like, so part of the thing where I would challenge Rhys is most people think they're unique. And it's the commonality in all of us, which helps the industry to be able to say, let me find the commonality amongst all of us.
Yeah.
To be able to, but the uniqueness, which is part of that challenger attitude, challenger mentality, to say, normal people can't fix me. You have to be extraordinary people.
The normies can't fix it. And I know you're saying,
right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So, but I, Jason, I love the point that talks about it's not about fixing. It's understanding what the uniqueness, unique characteristics that you have, and how do you leverage those superpowers to do something else, whatever that roadblock is, or obstacle, or challenge, or whatever you're trying to solve.
Right. And what resources do you already have that you just happen to be forgetting about? So again, when we go back to the entrepreneur life, how often you feel overwhelmed or your vision just gets constricted. That means at that moment, you're not seeing that there's a whole bunch of resources all around you. You've just forgotten about those resources. My job is to go, hey, you know what? You've been here before. Like, what did it look like then? And or I could use another methodology where I go, okay, who do you really respect that's taking care of something like this, and how did they go about it? And you go, oh yeah, they did that. That fits like a glove. I'm going to do that.
How how would you help say to people like the kind of built-in bias I have of skepticism? What's the best way for people to kind of if they're trying to find a coach, or if a coach has come to them, for them to go, is this person like an experienced, educated, qualified expert, or are they someone who just went on a channel on TikTok and went down a rabbit hole and has gone, I'm a coach now? What are like some simple ways that you would kind of recommend them kind of differentiate?
Yeah, we'll go there in a millisecond, but I would actually start with, well, what do you actually want out of coaching? So, so if you actually want mentoring, or if you want somebody to come in and solve a very specific question or problem within podcasting, you're actually not looking for a coach. You're looking for a consultant in that particular case, right?
Yeah.
Now, they might present themselves as a coach. So then you have to go and you're looking for the background and the exact skill that you're trying to solve. And that's different than finding, a traditional business coach who you're actually looking, number one, where did they get their training? And again, International Coaching Federation is the gold standard. International Coaching Federation has over 50,000 accredited coaches across the world. I can tell you, because my area within Lethbridge Polytechnic also runs a coaching education program. It is tough to get those programs accredited. Like, we have to go through a lot to make sure that the quality of our programming is such that it's going to have very good graduates. In fact, all the way to the point that we have to actually record them doing coaching sessions, of course, with the person who's being coached, their permission. That gets sent to International Coaching Federation. They measure them against the International Coaching Federation core competencies. They have 3 different people actually looking at that recording to make sure that our quality of education led to this person being able to coach at a certain quality, right? So that is typically a good place to start. There's 3 levels of accreditation within that. There's ACC, which is Associate Credentialed Coach, PCC, and then MCC. And the difference is how many hours of coaching you actually have under your belt, and then you have to do more testing in order to get to that next level, right? So it's fairly intense to make sure that it is high quality coaching, and that these folks are going to do a good job with each customer. There's also a code of ethics that goes along with that, which I think is really important. Things like confidentiality. The last thing you want is somebody who has no credentials and no code of conduct around confidentiality, and all of a sudden they're coaching somebody else in your same business and telling all about what you do and how you do it, right? So yeah, do your background check. But that would be the first place I'd look, is what is their actual education within coaching.
That sounds like that. You've painted a picture of, I imagine, like some global headquarters that is like kind of epic, where, but also a panel where like they kick people off who've like
like a lawyer's
besmirched the name of
right.
high-end coaching. Yeah. No, I'm happy that thing exists, because like even knowing they've got that sounds like that's a good place to start.
It's a designation that you received that you can put at the
Yeah,
end of the name?
it's an accreditation. So in my case, I'm PCC. So there's the ACC, which is you have 100 hours, you've passed 60 hours of coach education training. PCC, you need 120 hours of coach education training plus 500 hours of coaching. So I'm a PCC. MCC, which are about 5% of those 50,000 plus coaches in the world, they have 2,500 hours of coaching. And let me tell you, every MCC coach I have ever met, I don't know how to describe it. They are otherworldly. They walk into a room differently than other human beings.
It sounds like do they have robes?
Yeah, like they almost should.
Yeah. Well, he's excited by this. I'm slightly disappointed because I saw a link to become a coach and I almost clicked it. I was thinking it would be just 2 steps.
You'd be a terrible coach.
Actually,
you just like to challenge people. That's just in your nature.
Right.
So,
So that's wonderful feedback in regards to going through the process of vetting a coach. And I want to go back to the first part, because it actually goes back to the very first part of this conversation with you that talked about being an imperfect person. The challenge for, I think, most businesses and individuals, we also know that we're imperfect and we don't know what problems that we're trying to fix. And so to be able to say, who am I looking for based on the problems that I have? Entrepreneurs don't just have one problem. We got a lot of problems, and trying to figure out the priorities of, is it growth? Is it getting out of it? Is it building better teams? Is it better products? There's so many questions for us to say, what problem am I trying to solve today? And do I need a army of coaches, mentors, leaders, consultants, etc.?
And I was thinking Barrett, who we had as our last guest, we were like, hey, what's some quick tips? And he was like, oh, I can't do that. You need to like actually start the process for me to be, he wasn't in the business of giving like handy little kind of like nuggets that would like, do that, which I kind of get. He's like, you have to be in the process to do it, but then that's kind of a level of faith you've got to take in going, I'm going to invest my time in this process. So like, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you only need an hour with someone to actually kind of like start that process? I mean, maybe they just have a different structure, I guess.
This is almost your step one question, or your freebie ask.
Freebie
ask, right? So, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the reality is most of my coaching engagements are longer term. But I always make sure that they have an out at the very beginning, because there has to be some chemistry between the two people. Otherwise, why are you doing this, right? Like, if you don't like your coach, go find another coach. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? So it takes a little while at least to kind of build the base trust between two human beings, and I can do that typically in an hour, and then we're really working on things already that second hour, right? But that very first conversation, like, we need to learn about each other. I need to understand like what makes you tick, and what are you struggling with, and what makes you feel completely and totally alive, and those kind of things, which that takes a little bit of time to do. Yeah. So we are not on day one, we are not going into solving a big problem or opportunity right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it, because I was just, moments ago criticizing people saying, hey, these are 5 steps to glory. It makes total sense that there has to be a bit more of a process. I cannot imagine. Could you imagine being told that you have to go into coaching sessions like once a week for like 6 months, and people don't get on, or they don't see eye to eye? Or just fundamentally, like that must be so difficult. But I imagine it happens all the time.
I don't know. It depends. Again, my experience with coaches that come from the International Coaching Federation is they're really well trained. So their job is to make sure that they understand how to help you feel seen, heard, and understood.
Okay.
The moment you feel seen, heard, and understood, something changes in the relationship. I call it relational resonance. And you guys kind of talked about this with your employees, right? Like, you want to make sure that you're working with them and meeting them where they're at. That's helping them feel seen, heard, and understood. And as soon as you've created enough trust, that there's just an energy between the two of you when you walk into the room that wasn't there before.
I was going to come back to the scenario where you've got, like, you're in that session. Maybe we could role play some questions you would ask.
So let's talk about, and I'm only going to do one for right now, because actually it can go pretty deep. So and like, each of you would have to answer this one separately, and deep, not scary deep. I saw, okay. John, I saw your head move a little bit when I said that.
He flinched.
So, yeah, exactly. So no, not that type of deep. But so I'd like you to both think about a time within either this business journey or another business journey where you felt most alive, most fulfilled, most excited to come into the work that you do, and absolutely just in like that flow state, that everything came easy and you're just absolutely vibrating with aliveness? And just describe it for me.
I have a couple, and for different reasons. One is, as an entrepreneur, it's an unusual state. The first time I experienced it was when I was essentially riding a wave of ahead of everybody else, and felt like I knew a secret, and was able to share it. And so it was that communication, and people were listening and leaning in to hear that secret. To me, that was the first wave. And from that, every business that I've launched, we would rather be able to provide something extraordinary, not just a service-based business or do a job. People turn to us to say, "I've got a problem. How would you fix it?" And it's that collaborative approach. So that's one thing from a business standpoint. The other is that I'm a people pleaser, but I love to build teams that have that same momentum, that same energy, and I grow off of that. And having people around me that are better than I am, that do better things, elevate what I can do. And it to me, it's contagious. Good people become contagious to be a great person. Right?
I think there's two things for me. One is my constant chasing dopamine. And these are kind of lots of mini moments that happen again and again when we share some work with a client and they come back and they're delighted. And or they, in a call, and they just the fact that they feel like we have been able to do something for them where we listened to them, they had a problem, and we came back, and they feel like everything they were asking for is there and more. To me, those are like moments where I'm like, yes, this is why we're here. This is great. And then the other one would be. And this is very similar in more like a creative thing, creating something that has an emotional reaction from a total stranger or someone I know. It can be anyone really, to the point where, when lots of people create things and put it out there on social media and TV and radio and everything, but a lot of people don't listen or react. But when something does connect and make people laugh or cry and feel something, that is always... it kind of is a real high, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. I'm just going to intentionally repeat back some of what you said. And you saw me writing down, and I'll often do that because there's just clues in what you said as far as if you expanded those things, guess what? Your business would probably automatically grow, right? So I love, Jon, like when people are leaning in, like that gets me right away. Like they're in with me on this, right? When we create something extraordinary, when there's that collaborative feeling between me and the customer, that means a lot to me. And then you turn to, oh yeah, as we're building our team, and your word, not mine, when there's that natural energy between us, that's relational resonance, just so you know, from my perspective. So that energy with that team, when we grow and we do better, and when things just feel contagious. Now think about that. If you could just kind of go, well, what are the key elements to creating more of that? What would be different?
Right. I refer to it as a momentum plan. Gaining that momentum and moving it forward, which is that contagious element. And it's like anything. When you're pushing a rock uphill, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
But as soon as it starts rolling,
I don't do that very often.
No, right. Right. So it's a momentum plan, and it's a question I ask myself: what is that plan? What is that momentum plan? And our strength is having worked in organizations that were the opposite of that. I would rather get hit by a car before I got to work than actually get to work. And so it's a terrible notion. And so for Rhys and I, we're both in that same perspective that talks about, let me make sure that I want to walk into work and I really walk in with a smile, which is then for everybody else. I want everybody else to come into work and come in with a smile. And that's sort of been our approach. So
when you said about contagious as well, so one of the things we found more and more, especially with where we're at now, is that clients like to hang out in the space and look forward to the time coming here and working in the studio to the point where we're kind of like, wow, we've realized that like people just want to be here to do their work. So that, and they comment on, they like the energy, they like the team, they feel relaxed, which is always we wanted that. We wanted people to come here and feel like they could be could talk open and honestly and on their podcasts. So I think that when you say contagious, I was like, I guess it is rubbing off on the clients and the client experience when they're kind of face to face with us. And but that's a lot of that comes from our team, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then Rhys, you say, I like the chase of the dopamine, right? That when we get to share our work, that the end client is absolutely delighted with what they see. They received what they wanted and more. So there's something about like that feeling of delivering it to them that they're just blown away by it. And then creating that emotional reaction for a stranger where they literally connect with some sort of work that you're putting out into the world and they feel something, therefore you've probably changed them internally. So it's like I'm doing this because it feels like it's a heart level thing to me. So what would happen if you just leaned into that and figured out how to do more of that?
I guess like before I did this, I did a lot of broadcast, and one of the things with that was this was like the only social media at the time was like Facebook and Twitter, and they were kind of not as prevalent. Social media wasn't as prevalent, and that was weird because you were making stuff and it was going out there, and they were measuring with like TV ratings. Whereas I found that moving in this direction with doing work with clients is a lot more rewarding because it's a much closer. You build a relationship with that person, so when you're delivering that work, it is different. So I guess I kind of have been leaning into that. The more we can delight our clients, the better.
I neither of us answered your questions.
No, we didn't. Did we?
I think it's, I don't know if it's conscious, probably not, but we sidestepped your direct question regards to and a very good plan. What would it be if we could? And we told a different story. We deflected, and I don't know, which is the nature of the podcast for us, is that's a really good question. Thanks for asking it. And then off we go. And we're like, we didn't actually dig into what would the business be like if we amplified your chase for dopamine, or
enabled.
Right? I don't. Right.
So I know they're good questions, though. I think like your approach is good because you put us in a position where we're kind of really thinking about. You made us really think about who we are and what we do and why we do it. And so I think the way you approached it and then reflected back to us, just to kind of. Yeah, I thought it was as an exercise, it was a really good way to kind of get us to open up and start a discussion.
And I'm curious for you two, like, what did you notice between the two of you as you were describing these things?
I guess I could recognize what Jon was saying. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like Jon. That's as deep as I went. Sorry.
I hear you, Rhys. I understand you.
Yeah. There's Jon's describing himself accurately.
Right. It now explains why there's a bowl of sugar in his office.
Jon, did you notice anything?
You know what? It's no, I didn't.
I love your guys' honesty.
Right.
So this is what I was experiencing as you guys were talking. And Jon, it's funny because you led with this, is people are leaning in. The energy between the two of you as you were describing that, I was leaning in. Right? So there was just this natural energy from actually looking at, and by the way, that question was asked through a lens called appreciative inquiry, which is we're just looking at what's working really well and how can we amplify those things is where we would go next. And we'd explore it even a little bit further and we'd go, okay, well, what are the values at play here? And can we tie to those values? What are the mechanics within the organization that help you make sure these things are living in the day-to-day life of you and the people within your organization, and how can we amplify those things, right?
Yeah. I think those are phenomenal questions because there's very infrequently we do a business internal self-reflection, which is to say, it's working really well. We never stop and say, this is awesome, and sort of appreciate the moment that we're in.
No.
And so for you to say, okay, but if it's succeeding and doing really well, why? put a pin in that and figure out why is it working really well. And then if you can go, let's just amplify that why. So I think it's a wonderful question.
And that's one big thing that we never do is we never stop and appreciate what we've done. We're always looking ahead.
Yeah.
And we comment and going, it's been all right, haven't it? We've done all right.
But
well done.
It's right. It's cursory, but it is a symptom of the hustle culture that you'd mentioned earlier, and we know it's a bit of that piece there.
Yeah.
And you talked
subconscious hustle,
right? Which is we need to be in the moment more. We know that that's a fundamental thing for us, but we're also like, but we can get better tomorrow and tomorrow, right? So there's a bunch of things to probably unpack there, and I know we're getting late on our time here.
And we're very
let me just say one thing. What if let's say we just agreed that we were doing an hour conversation at a time? What if that hour was only about exactly what you just described, having you go from this to looking up? Like, would that change your business?
Oh, definitely. Now, that said, we're actually not looking down. If you look at our thumbnail, we're actually always looking into the vision.
Fair.
That's where we're headed. But yeah, you're right. Your point is correct, is that we're not necessarily looking at the most important thing to be looking at. I don't know if that's true.
See, but I thrive in uncertainty and change. It really energizes me to get my head down and go. So I find it like hard to. I do look up, but looking down and being focused and kind of has always been the thing that has allowed me to succeed, I guess.
My biggest takeaway is that question that you just asked, which is to take an hour and focus on one thing. One focus, one issue, right? Instead of, because this has been a wonderful conversation, and we appreciate the conversation.
You're one of the good ones, Jason.
Right.
Oh, thanks.
Right. Yeah. You know what? It took an hour, and we've got actually under an hour, and he's already built this trust. Right? It's just
he has. He's really good. You're incredible. Everything you described at the start in terms of your ability to kind of do that, I'm like, yeah, I believe you.
And he didn't just click on the link to become a coach. He actually did.
I know. Exactly.
Yeah. So Jason, this has been phenomenal for us. We really appreciate this. There's one of my takeaways, or one of my questions for you is, you may have noticed as you were asking us questions, Rhys and I are quick to humor. We like to smile. We like to have fun. There is joy in the space, and a consequence of that, or a problem out of that, is we often deflect what that question is that you're asking. And so how would you deal with individuals that wouldn't necessarily focus on the problem? We deflect and go towards something else. How do you deal with
this? So it seems so incredibly simple, but I would literally ask a question and then I would be silent. And I would look at you and that's it. And eventually, and you would end up breaking the silence. And then if you still didn't ask the question, I would literally say, hey, you didn't ask that question. I noticed you didn't ask that question. And then I would shut up.
I would crack within half a second.
No, I like the challenge. I'm all set. I feel like I'm scaring me already. Right, okay.
And I would say that was probably the toughest thing for me to learn within my coaching journey, is the power of silence is just absolutely incredible when and you can only do that once you actually have a baseline trust between two people, right?
Yeah. You don't want to make people feel uncomfortable in the first session.
Yeah, it wouldn't be good. Yeah.
So, Jason, thank you so much. If people have kind of enjoyed your approach and your style and kind of knowledge you brought, where can people find you and learn more?
Yeah, so they can connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect with people on there. Or they can send me an email at jason@gooddonker.com.
I love it. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And we're on our journey meeting coaches, and I really enjoyed this one. I think this was the way you made me think about myself, maybe uncomfortable, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you.
John's using silence on me. Stop it, John. Talk.
This is my biggest takeaway. I love it. It's like my new secret power. Jason, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you both. This was really fun.
The best place to find this podcast is wherever you find podcasts.
That's where I'd start.